Welcome to Tales from the Grave. Today we're in East Lancashire at a place called Townley Hall, situated in Burnley, the home of the Townley family. We're going to make our way inside. We'll hear stories of heroes, of villains, and some very, very ghostly goings on. Welcome to Tales from the Grave, coming to you from Burnley, Townley Hall. Of course, Townley Hall was not only the home of the Townley family. After 1901, the last of the Townleys passed away, and Burnley Borough Council are now responsible for looking after Townley Hall. It's not only a beautiful place to visit, it is indeed an art gallery and museum. Now, every city, every town in Great Britain has famous sons and daughters. Behind me are two local men that won the most amazing medal the British and Commonwealth forces can receive, the Victoria Cross. Let's have our first story, taking in Lieutenant Albert Victor Smith. His father was actually the police commissioner of Burnley, and Albert was going to join him in the Lancashire police force, and for a while he served with the Blackpool division. In World War I, he was called up into the East Lancashire Regiment. He was sent to a horrible place called Gallipoli. Now, Gallipoli was the brainchild of none other than Winston Churchill. Yes, we are looking at World War I. At that period of time, Winston Churchill was indeed the first Sea Lord. And he had this idea of having a landing on what we call the Dardanelles, the Gallipoli Peninsula, to move inland and literally take out the Ottoman Empire. The Turks, of course, were loyal to the Germans, and the British underestimated them very, very badly. When they landed in April 1915, they met terrible, terrible opposition from the Turkish defenders. The whole idea was to sweep into the country, but they hardly ever got off the beach. The British and Australians managed to secure a beachhead, and that's all they did. They had a long succession of trenches, and the Turks couldn't get them off the top of the cliffs, but the British and Australians and New Zealanders couldn't get inland. On the 23rd of December 1915, Lieutenant Smith and his platoon were at the front line. They'd been under heavy fire all day when a large group of Turks came rushing towards them, and the lieutenant opened up his pouch and brought out a Mills grenade, a hand grenade. He pulled the pin out and was about to throw it at the enemy when it slipped from his hands and fell into the bottom of the trench. He shouted, "Look out, boys, look out!" He climbed out of the trench, but he was quite horrified to see that some of his men were having difficulty getting out. So he very bravely decided to make a split decision and he jumped into the trench and lay on top of the hand grenade. In doing so, he saved the lives of the men that were still left in the trench. For this great act of bravery, he of course was awarded the Victoria Cross. This is Private Whitton of the Coldstream Guards, another local Burnley lad. He was going to join the lieutenant by receiving the Victoria Cross. His story is slightly different, really. Now, of course, Lieutenant Victor Smith was in the East Lancashire Regiment, the local regiment for this part of the world. But Private Whitton was quite a tall lad, and he joined one of the most famous regiments in the British Army, the Coldstream Guards. Yes, he would have been at Horse Guards, he would have been at Buckingham Palace, and he would have indeed been at the Tower of London. He was a very smart soldier, like any Coldstream Guardsman. However, on the 31st of July 1917, he was at a place called Ypres, known commonly to the British Tommies as Wipers. His platoon advanced towards the German lines. They came under very, very heavy machine gun fire from the left flank, the right flank and the centre. Private Whitton noticed his mates were falling like ninepins, like racks of dominoes, into waves of German machine gun fire. And he saw lads that he knew very well lose their lives that day. He dived into a shell crater. It was there and then he decided to have a go at all three German machine gun emplacements by himself. He calmly fixed his bayonet on the end of the Lee Enfield rifle and jumped out of the shell crater and advanced towards the first German machine gun. They could see him. He was zigzagging all the way, at Olympic speed, if you will. He then jumped into another shell crater, and the Germans knew exactly where he was. He must have swallowed deeply. He then took a deep breath and jumped out of the shell crater and ran towards the German machine gun, again zigzagging, getting closer and closer. He then knelt down, carefully pulled the bolt back and put a round at the spout and fired at the German gunner, killing him. He then rushed forward and bayoneted the man next to him and captured the officer. The second machine gun then turned on him. He then turned round and opened fire on that, killing the crew. He then waved to his men. It's clear. For this great act of bravery, he was awarded the Victoria Cross. He came back to Burnley and got a job as a bricklayer. And in the 1930s, this terrible, terrible recession hit the whole of Great Britain. And that recession had no respect even for a Victoria Cross winner. Private Whitton, due to his actions that day, had an effect on him. To take someone's life is not a pleasant job, really. It had an effect on him. And sadly, alcohol took over his life. He pawned the Victoria Cross and he pawned a gold watch that Burnley Council had given him. And sadly died at the age of 36, just 36 years of age. Of course, the Victoria Cross belonged to the people of Burnley, and Burnley Borough Council purchased the Victoria Cross, which of course is on display here at Townley Hall. Let's now make our way around this fantastic building. What I love about Townley Hall is every room has a different story, and we'll find some amazing stories today here at Townley Hall. We're now going to make our way into the main hall and look at some of this magnificent Italian craftsmanship. This is the main reception area here at Townley Hall. As you can see, we are surrounded by some gorgeous Italian architecture. The Townley family wanted something grand, so they brought in a team from Italy of highly professional craftsmen. As you can see, their work is still here as a testament of their excellent quality workmanship, still here in the 21st century. By far one of the most interesting stories relating to this beautiful room is a ball that took place in 1785. It was a ball hosted by the Townley family, of course, and as each person came for that very door, they were given a glass of claret. In the corner, an orchestra played some beautiful music from that period of time. One such guest arrived, and he was a local hero. He was called Captain Barcroft. And Barcroft had served in the American War of Independence. He'd been quite badly wounded and had a rather nasty scar across his face. However, he was loved by Lord Wellington, because Wellington had actually seen him take the French Eagle in the Peninsular Wars and made him a lieutenant straight away. He rose up through the ranks to become a captain, and Lord Wellington sent Captain Barcroft on a mission, and that mission was to go back to his hometown of Colne, not too far from Burnley. There he made his way to the market cross, and he shouted from the market cross, "I want every young man in the town of Colne to join me in the fight against the Spanish and the French." Well, of course, a lot of people looked at him as a hero, and they joined up. Barcroft was a hero with the lads that wanted to fight with him, but not with the mothers, the wives, and the girlfriends, because children as young as 14 actually joined up that day. This huge band of volunteers left Colne, did their military training, and then made their way down to Southampton, where they joined two large troop ships, one of them called the Erebus. They set off for the peninsula. In the Bay of Biscay, this terrible storm came from nowhere, and both vessels were capsized. Every single person on board drowned without seeing a single enemy soldier. Their bodies washed ashore. Of course, the Spanish saw the bodies on the shore and they stripped them of their uniforms. Barcroft could only be identified by the scar across his face, which of course he had received in the American War of Independence. Barcroft Hall is not too far from here and the home of the Barcroft family, but what an amazing story. Let's now continue with our tour of Townley Hall. We're now going to make our way through the green Regency room to the red Regency room for some more tales from Townley Hall. These two beautiful rooms, the room behind me is known as the green room dining room. Here, the red Regency room was used for entertainment purposes. If these two fabulous rooms could talk, they would tell you some amazing stories relating to the Townley family. Let's have our first one right now. A story that was conceived in this very room and is known simply as the Lancashire Sting. Living here in Townley Hall in the 1850s was a gentleman called Peregrine Townley. What a fantastic name, Peregrine. Peregrine was actually loved by the people of Burnley because he got involved with everything. Would you believe he even got involved in poaching on his own land? However, he was a very, very clever guy and he was known simply as the sly old fox. He carried out a most amazing story and a most amazing event which has gone down in history as the Lancashire Sting. Now, Peregrine heard about some land coming for sale by land auction. He knew that the land auction was going to take place at the inn at Whitewell in the beautiful Ribble Valley. He also knew if he went to the auctioneers would recognise him and say, "Oh, this man's got a lot of money, let's keep bumping and bumping the price up." So therefore he conceived a fantastic plan. On the day of the auction, in this very room, he came down for breakfast. He then got an old suit and ripped the knees open, ripped the sleeves off, put an old pair of clogs on, put an eye patch on, and walked all the way from Burnley over what we call the Trough of Bowland and into the Hodder Valley, where the inn at Whitewell was. He hammered on the door. The innkeeper opened the door. "Can I help you, sir? Have you got some soup for an old man? I've not eaten in 5 days. Of course we have. Peregrine was given a bowl of hot soup. He then looked and saw people entering the auction room, and he asked the innkeeper, "What are those people doing there then?" "Oh, land auction at 1 o'clock. They expect this very wealthy man from Burnley called Peregrine Townley to buy the whole of the Dunsop Bridge estate by land auction." "Oh, do they?" said Peregrine, disguised as the tramp. "Can I watch, please?" "Well, look at you, man," said the innkeeper. "You're a tramp, you've got no money. What use is a land auction to you? You can't buy anything." "Oh, please, can I just watch?" "Well, it won't do any harm," said the innkeeper, "but you stand at the back of the room and don't you say a word." At 1 o'clock, the auctioneer arrived from the city of London. He made his way inside the auction room and looked around the room. He couldn't see Peregrine Townley there because he was under the impression that he would be there to make a bid. "Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's exactly 1 o'clock. I can't see Mr. Townley here, so I can only presume he's not in today's sales, so let's have your bids for the Dunsop Bridge estate by land auction." From the back of the room, Peregrine, disguised as the tramp, shouted, I'll give you £5, mister. The room erupted in laughter for two reasons. £5 would not buy the estate, and secondly, an old tramp wouldn't even have 5 pennies on him, never mind £5, which was quite a lot of money for that period of time. The auctioneer thought this was a real bit of fun. With tears of laughter, he brought the gavel up. Ha ha ha! Sell the old geezer back the room for £5! Brought the gavel down. Another roar of laughter from all the other potential buyers. And then there was a stunned silence as Peregrine made his way to the podium, reached into his torn shirt and produced a £5 note. Who are you? Who are you? Screamed the auctioneer. The name's Peregrine, Townley Hall, Burnley, thank you. And he bought the whole estate for £5. The auctioneer was given a very stiff drink, made his way back to London and was sacked on the spot. His firm had to sell all their insurances, all their assets, everything, to pay the original landowners what they thought was a fair and honest price. But this is where the story gets even better. As you've gathered, Peregrine Townley was a sly old fox, a very clever guy. He bought the land in Dunsop Bridge. He had a son called John. For John's 21st birthday, he bought him a lovely horse called Royal Butterfly. 3 years later, Royal Butterfly conceived and gave birth to a colt. And as the colt was being born at Dunsop Bridge, the stable lad stood around and said, "Oh, sir, his back's fine, sir. His head's fine, sir. You got a lovely horse here, sir. A right good thoroughbred, I reckon." It was a beautiful horse, and they called him Kettledrum. He grew, and he grew, and he grew. That's when John Townley would take him for canters around the Ribble Valley, and that's when Peregrine reached into his pocket one day and produced his stopwatch. My goodness me, John, that horse is rather fast. I've got a great idea. Let's enter Kettledrum in the 1861 Epsom Derby. Oh, father, he won't stand a chance. That's the finest racehorse in Great Britain. He's got no form. He's never been a race before. No one knows him. Exactly. No one knows him. I have a cunning plan. And what a cunning plan. They took Kettledrum down to Epsom the day before the race. He was entered and taken into the enclosure so the bookies, the turf accountants, could all have a good look at this horse. When Kettledrum entered the arena, there was hysterical laughing from all the bookies, all the turf accountants, because Peregrine had put what we call the Epsom sting into action. A tablespoonful of bicarbonate of soda in the creature's mouth. Warm water, not hot water, but warm water poured in his back, so Kettledrum was indeed frothing and indeed steaming quite badly. When he was entered into the arena, the turf accountant said, no, this horse, it's a joke. We don't know the jockey, we don't know the horse, and what's more, that horse is not well. He's got distemper or something. 500 to 1 against. 500 to 1 against. The following morning, Kettledrum was led down to the starting line and John Townley very proudly climbed on his back. That day he was competing against two of the finest racehorses in Great Britain, Excalibur and Dundee, the two hot favourites. The race started. Well, at first Kettledrum wasn't doing very well, but this little horse from Lancashire, with 2,000 yards to go, was gaining on Excalibur. With 500 yards to go, he got past Excalibur and was going head-to-head with Dundee. With 15 yards to go, he got his head and shoulder over the line to win the 1861 Epsom Derby at 500 to 1 against. Around Epsom that day, all you could hear was the sound of suitcases being slammed shut and bookies running for cover because they knew they couldn't cover the odds. However, back here in Burnley, the locals knew if the Townley family had a horse in this race, it was going to win. As a result, whole families put their life savings on Kettledrum to win the derby. Within 3 hours, every public house in Burnley, Nelson and Colne had been drunk completely dry. But the Towneys were ardent Catholics. The money they made that day are what you and I would call a lottery win. They gave 3/4 of their winnings to the Vatican for good Catholic causes. The remainder, at the beautiful village of Dunsop Bridge in the Ribble Valley, they built a gorgeous church called St. Hubert's Roman Catholic Church. To this very day, you can walk inside St. Hubert's and look at the ceiling, and there in gorgeous gold leaf lettering of the words Kettledrum, 1861 Epsom Derby winner. Not too far from here is a lovely pub called the Kettledrum, and around the top of the bar are photographs taken that day of this Lancashire horse frothing at the mouth and steaming quite badly. What a gorgeous story. So let's start from the very, very beginning. The Townley family had this beautiful hall built around 1505, that period of time. They were ardent Catholics like most families from that part of the world. And in the year 1536, a terrible thing happened to the Catholic faith. King Henry VIII actually outlawed the Catholic faith. He'd had one or two wives beheaded, one or two wives divorced, and he was getting a little bit tired of the Pope, and the Pope was getting a little bit tired of him. So therefore the king thought, that's it, I'm going to sever all links with Rome, and anyone preaching Catholicism would be classed as a traitor. Sir John Townley lived here at that period of time, and he had a very, very important visitor called Abbot John Paslow. Paslow came from Whalley Abbey near Clitheroe, some 7 miles from where we are now. One of the largest abbeys in the north of England, and the abbot was really concerned about these precious, precious vestments behind me, which are worth a fortune. He brought them to Towneley Hall and had a word with Sir John. Sir John, please could you look after these? I don't want them to be destroyed. You're a good Catholic man. Please will you look after them? He did do. As for Abbot John Paslow, the Earl of Derby's forces came down over what we call Whalley Nab, and there they massacred all the monks. And Abbot John Paslow and the Abbot of Sawley Abbey nearby were both sent to the city of Lancaster. There they were put on trial. Their only crimes were to be members of the Roman Catholic faith. Both men were hung, drawn and quartered. A very, very painful death in the city of Lancaster. However, here we are in the 21st century, and the Whalley vestments are safe here at the Townley Hall Art Gallery. Absolutely priceless.